Hello and welcome. I'm glad you can join us today from across the globe for Esri UK's webinar, The Future of Spatial Editing for Utilities. We have an exciting agenda, but before I introduce our speakers, I would like to go through a few housekeeping items so you know how to participate in today's webinar. The session today is being recorded and we'll share a link with you via email. We welcome you to revisit the content yourself or share it with colleagues and contacts. We also invite your comments and questions for today's presenters by submitting your questions via the Q&A section. We will answer them during the Q&A session at the end of today's webinar. If you encounter any technical difficulties with the Q&A, please forward the questions via the email on screen now, and we'll follow up with you directly. We also have a survey at the end of the webinar, so please share your comments there too if you would like to talk to anyone from our utility editor network specialists in the future. My name is Jonathan Swaddle and I work in the Critical National Infrastructure team here at Esri UK. I've specialised in the utility sector since 2012, supporting many of Esri's water, gas, electricity, renewables and nuclear customers. I'm glad to announce today that I'll be joined by two colleagues who will be presenting and answering questions. Ben Walker is a Senior Solution Architect within our Professional Services team, focusing on the water sector. Ben has worked in the utility sector for over 12 years and brings a wealth of technical expertise, customer best practice and sector knowledge to today's discussions. Glenn Ollie sits within Esri UK's Technical Enablement team as a GIS consultant. Glenn's focus is to support our customers in maximising the use of ArcGIS in line with business challenges and opportunities. So why is utility data significantly growing in importance for the modern utility? Well, data is at the heart of everything you deliver, and we are seeing a transformational change in the way you are tackling the challenges ahead. In the electricity sector, understanding the best location for electric vehicle charging, the network capacity of two-way energy circuits, and forecasting demand in line with housing developments is all driven through data. For water, understanding information on networks, capacity, inputs and consumption is foundational to driving leakage reduction and strategic resilience investment. A transition to hydrogen for the gas industry can only be explored through understanding the networks and assets today and how these can be evolved to support the future network. Furthermore, as we push to evolve digital twins and tackle extreme weather events, all our opportunities and challenges lead back to data. And when we wrap in a spatial approach through ArcGIS, we open up new ways to capture, store, analyse, visualise and share new business intelligence. Supporting the utility of the future and transformational change this drives requires high-fidelity data that can be updated and shared in a timely manner with stakeholders. The key foundation to this is ArcGIS Utility Network, which is a next-generation modern asset management solution that enables several key benefits, including the ability to access advanced network modelling through a robust and configurable network model that allows you to define your network to a granular level of detail for all the assets and groups required for a modern, complex network. Secondly, it has world-class visualizations and analytics for timely reporting, 3D models, and to underpin digital twins. Finally, Utility Network has a service-based architecture and security to support data integrity and control access while helping scalability and performance, more robust integrations, and on-premise and cloud infrastructures. The utility network is foundational to managing the modern network, and through implementation, it unlocks many of other capabilities, including 3D, digital twins, BIM, imagery, and automation, to name but a few. Utility Network Editor helps maximize the benefits of the utility network while streamlining the data capture process through a user-friendly interface. Feel free to visit the historic webinars at the link on screen for more details. Utility Network Editor enables 3 key benefits for the modern utility. As a web solution delivered through a services-based architecture, users can view, update, and edit network infrastructure data in the browser at any time and anywhere. This means users always access a single source of the truth and maintain network connectivity everywhere. Think about the potential a lightweight application could offer your workforce in providing a simple and secure interface for staff and contractors to view and maintain a single data source across your collaborative enterprise. Secondly, data capture is simplified, enabling the removal of lengthy QA processes as users receive instant feedback and validation of edits at point of entry. Imagine how your workflows could benefit from efficient capture of accurate data at source, feeding through to decision makers, integrated systems, and collaboration partners. Finally, empowering everyone in your organization to access the utility network without requiring specialized GIS knowledge through an easy-to-use interface holds huge potential. Users can run advanced editing and analysis tools like tracing in the web browser, identifying assets or customers affected by a fault on your network as it happens, for example. What powerful spatial tools could you provide to your users? Utility Network Editor opens up an array of opportunities to revolutionize current business processes, empowering users to work more effectively with key, timely data at their fingertips. So to explore the potential of Utility Network Editor, I'm now going to hand over to Glenn for a demonstration. Glenn.
Hi, everybody, and thanks for joining our webinar from all over the world. I'm Glenn Ollie, a GIS consultant, as Jonathan introduced me. And in this webinar, I'll show you how we can use Utility Network Editor. For these demo purposes, we will see UNE in use applied to an electric distribution network. Before we begin with the demos, I want to talk a little regarding the position of utility network relatively to the utility network services. Utility Network Editor is a COTS web application which runs in any modern web browser, and it's a client to the ArcGIS utility network. It operates with any utility network data model, which can be including gas, electric, water, and telco. The utility network is an incredibly powerful service-based technology, and because it's service-based, a web client such as UNE can connect to it and ask questions of it, display data, and perform editing. UNE sits alongside all other powerful clients such as ArcGIS Pro or ArcGIS Field Maps. So we have written UNE itself to be highly configurable application, which is aimed at delivering editing tasks, but also lots of view-only experiences, as well as tracing and different tools to style your workflow. UNE is coming with a really intuitive application builder, which can be used by admin users or GIS professionals to build applications for all different user groups in your organization. So what I'm going to do now is look at utility network and some of the user groups that might typically see in a utility. Today, as I told you before, we'll be looking at an electric utility organization, and we'll see how the application can be configured to work for them. First, we are going to have a look at our field editors or engineers, which is a user group that will be constantly interacting with and editing asset information which is stored in the network. They will be a new source of raw data, updating the current state of the network and connectivity all in real time. It is also probable that they will be making decisions based on the local information that they have on the network around them. Now I'm going to jump over to UNE, to our application tailored towards fields editors. I want to begin by providing a bit of an orientation inside the UNE portal, where, as you can see, we have got several applications focused for specific user groups. First, we're going to open the field editors application. So once the application is open, we can see that we have got an electric distribution network. And now my duties are to focus on some of the low voltage distribution side today in different workflows. And the first one that I'm going to look is at my field engineer. So this could be someone that is going out on the field, inspecting assets and a lot of other duties with data on the field. So we could have this application on field, on a tablet, and it offers tool for being able also to geolocate ourselves and make sure that we are on the current position. So this geolocation tool is one of our powerful tools, and also the previous extent and zoom in, zoom out functionalities. So the first thing that we want to see is by selecting an asset on the map, and in this case, I'm going to select what is actually a supporting pole. And on the left-hand side, you can see that I have got tabs showing what features I have selected. And I can see also the properties of that asset. So in the first case, we can see that the voltage type of the pole, you can see some material information, height that has been previously filled, and maybe this has been filled incorrectly. So now my tasks have been ground truthing some of the data on my network, and actually I can see that this pole is not in the actual position. So what we want to do is we want to shift at this other position. So we can try to shift at the other position, but we can notice that we are not allowed to do the shifting of this position of the pole to move it to the new position. And also we are not allowed to also edit the data. So what we are going to do, we are going to create a new version of the application in order to allow me to do the edits. So now that I have created the new version, the application puts me automatically into the version that I have just created. So now we are going to go back to the workflow. We are going to select the pole on the map, and after we select the pole on the map, we are going to hit one of our reshape functionalities, which allows us to move the electric pole in the network. So now, as we move the pole, because UNE understands the network information, understands that this pole is actually recorded in the network as being attached to some of these assets, such as overhead lines, and this line junction. Therefore, when I move the pole, also other features attached to the pole are moving. So what we can do now is that after we have moved the pole, we can actually jump to one of our other functionalities that utility network editors offers, which is the network panel. So we can see indeed that this pole is attached to the electric junction, which is right here. So you can see that when I have made this edit, it highlighted the other features which are affected by this edit in red. Now I'm not going to do any kind of redlining edit here. I'm just editing the actual topology of my network directly. So all these edits that I'm making are topologically, attributional, business logic correct edits. So since I'm also working in a different version, they can also go through quality assurance process. However, you can see here that I'm not being allowed to make these kind of edits that are breaking my network. So the second thing that we noticed during the first inspection using our utility network editor application is that the pole that we have just selected is actually not a wooden pole, and it's actually made of steel. So to do these changes, we can just move to the properties tab and we can make the changes. Because of the network rules, when I select the material type of the pole and change it to a new value, it says me that the height for this type of pole is not what we allow steel type poles to be classified. And because of this, I have to select a new height. What we also notice is that the UNE allows us also to configure different type of rules, such as the type of foundation. So in this case, we need to also change the type of foundation for this pole. And then once we are correctly to the business rules, we can save the changes. So these functionalities that I showed you now are typical functionalities that can be used by a field editor, but UNE also provides the ability to undo and redo any of the edits that we have just done. So if I click my undo button right now, you can see that also it moves the position of the pole back to its original position before, but also it moves the attributes. So now I'm going to actually redo and save all the changes that I have made. So that was a quick demo of a workflow for a field editor who can use a UNE to go out in the field and make changes to the network by moving assets and doing that while maintaining the correct topology of the network. The next step that we want to look is at a Q&A, or as we call it, a data technician user. We will be building out maybe a new development, new service connections into our network, and we will see how we can add these new assets, all while abiding by the business rules of the network. These edits are going to be essential for enabling our field engineers, our staff, to be able to correctly run through the other bits of logic, such as network tracing. So now we are going to jump back again to the utility network editor. And this time we are going to look at my data technician user. So in this application, once it's opened, you are going to notice that there have been some different configurations. So the user, in this case, the data technician or QA user, is able to create certain subset of assets, whereas maybe the field editor wasn't able to create these new assets. So as you can see, I'm again at one of my stations, one of my substations. So now I'm going to move to a bookmark location where we were tasked with the duty to add new service connections. Here, after we jump to the bookmark, you can see that there are several houses which have not associated with a service connection. And we have been given a plan by one of our engineers that we are going to put into our UNE system so it can help us to digitize the new service connection points. So as you can see, once we open the plan tab, we can also change the display properties of this plan that we use to make our life easier to digitize the new service connection types. So after we have carefully applied the plan, we can see that we can add a new pole, or we need to add a new pole as we have suggested by this plan. So if we try to add a new pole by using the create functionality and then choosing which type of utility asset do I need to add, it's not allowing us. So what we do, we move to the versioning. So we switch to the previous version that we have created in the previous application. And now, as you can see, all my editing tools to create new features are enabled. So we are going to create a single pole, first of all, and after we have filtered our options, we are going to place it in the maps, and we are going, after placing it in the map, we are going to jump to the properties. So we are going to specify its type, so it's a wooden type. We are going to specify its height and its foundation type in order for utility network to allow ourselves to make saves to these network elements. So after we have added the pole, the network doesn't know that this pole is attached to our overhead cable over here. So next step that we are going to do is we are going to perform a network association. So to perform a network association, you can see that we have an adaptive responsive design tools. So as you can see now, I select the attach functionality. So what the attach functionality does, it allows different network elements to be attached between themselves. So in this case, we did an attachment, and we can see after we did this attachment that if we try to move the pole, we are also moving the other network element which we created this attachment. So we are sure by doing this test, we are sure that the network elements are associated with each other. So the next step in this workflow is to add a new service connection. So in order to add a new service connection, we can just simply go to the network panel, or we can use the create functionality, but we are going to look at this other type of editing. So in the network panel, we have the network rules panel, which creates us or shows us all the association types or connection types that can be attached to the current network that we have. So after we have seen the network rules, so which shows us which transformer or which AC overhead can this network element connect to, we are going to draw an AC overhead low voltage conductor to perform the editing task that we were tasked by our plan. So we are just going to drag a line from the connection point to the service connection point, and then in order to finish or to complete our digitization process, we can just click on the top right corner to the complete functionality, and then the edit is finished. So we can also use the same network rules by selecting a single phase connector and place it on the end of this AC overhead low voltage conductor that we have made. So now we have been also seeing that while least we digitize this new asset, all the phase information that this previous line had has been passed to the new digitization line that we currently did. So the next step is to perform another service connection to the next house. So after we select the main AC, we are going to create another connection line with current properties. So in this case, I made a mistake by dragging it in the other way around. And we can also see again one of the powerful functionalities, in this case the reshape functionality. So let's assume in this case we make a mistake and we place these edits in a wrong position. So we can see that the reshape functionality allows us to edit and to make the changes that we are requested as per the plan. So after we selected this line, we can hit the reshape functionality and just move the line to the position that is requested. So what we are going to see next in this application is that we need to add a new residential connection for the third house, and in this case we can show that UNE is providing also some COGO functionalities. So the COGO functionalities in this case allow us to restrict this line to be a certain length. So in this case, we are going to do it on a 77 feet length line. So you can see that the application in this case is locking the length of the cable to be as the one that was inputted by us in the COGO tools. So we are going to draw it to till the distance allows us. And now after we have drawn, we are going to add a new connection point. So far, we have seen that this is a multi-step workflow, so we can do different workflows to perform same type of task that we have been tasked. UNE can also help us with different workflows by allowing you to create group templates, which provide the users with combination of multiple edits in one go. So in this case, when we create a new asset, by selecting the group template, this is going to create both the line and the service connection in one go. So now that we have seen also this this functionality of UNE, we are going to make sure that the edits that we have done are validated, and then we are going to check if they have gone into the network topology. So how this is done? This is done by zooming out on the map, and we can see on the left pane that there is a validation pane which has some numbers on it. So these numbers mean the errors or the number of errors that we have in this area. So once we open the validation pane, we can see each of these specific errors, and once we click one of these errors, the application jumps or zooms in to the place where this error is happening in our network. So we can check for this area that we made the edits, validate the network in the current map extent, and once this one is executed, we can see a message that in this case is going to say the network is valid and up to date. So after we have validated the changes to the data, we can perform some tracing, some upstream tracing to check the network connectivity, if it's valid or not. To do that, we hit the trace pane and make sure that the tracing type is set to upstream. And once we select the tracing type to upstream, we can specify a starting point. And after we have selected the starting point for our tracing, we can run the tracing. And in this case, we can see that this new single-phase residential connector has been added to our network. Finally, we will look at an operations team user group. These users will be collaborating with workers in a field in order to quickly assess the impact of any unplanned incidents and proactively work to contact customers who might be affected. In this section, we will be examining in detail the power of network tracing and having such a well-managed and accurate dataset. So for our final task, we are going to jump back to the utility network, this time in our final application. In this imagined scenario, we have received some reports of unplanned power interruptions to our customers. So we are going to jump to a location which was bookmarked before by us, and we can see a cluster of smart meters, and seeing these red dots here, which have sent out last gas signal indicating the loss of electrical supply. Over here, we have also a customer which has reported an outage. So we have been tasked with our ground teams to help identify the location of and the wider impact of this outage. So to start that, we are going to use our tracing functionality, and we are going to perform an upstream tracing from the connection that the customer called in, and then we'll pull out some information about these upstream protective devices. So as I showed you before, within UNE, it's very easy to run a network trace. So we just need to go with the trace option on the left panel. And once we open the tracing pane, we can select the tracing type. We are seeing also that when we hover over the connection point, we can see some of the key information of any of my service connection. This is just to help our operations team to quickly assess this kind of information if they need it. So now we are going to run an upstream protective source trace, which we have previously configured. So after we have run this trace, we will see that the application, once the trace finishes, it zooms to the extent of my trace. And what is happened in this case is that it has worked upstream and tracked back to the flow of the electricity through the network, all the way back to the substation, then down to the service connection. So if we zoomed over here to the medium voltage circuit breaker, where we can see on our trace result, we can then pass this information to our teams on the ground that they can see that there actually is a fault in one of the feeder laterals, and this has caused one of our fuse cutouts to mount, and this is what it is disconnected apart by the network. So now that the port has been identified, while the engineering team is working on the fix on the field, we can access the impact that this has on our downstream customers. So we are going to run a subsequent downstream trace, and in this case, we are going to select this fuse assembly. So when opening the network pane, we see this fuse assembly contains a medium voltage fuse, which we are going to use as our starting point for our new trace. And this can be also a starting point to run the downstream customer trace. So after we select the starting point of this downstream trace, which is the fuse assembly. We perform the trace, and when it finishes running, we can select, or we can see all the connections that are affected, which will be highlighted in yellow. So after we run this trace to track our downstream customer problems, we can see that the operation of the tracing brings us back with 1008 results. In this case, we also used some calculations to display some of the downstream load in the different energization phases, as you can see. So there are phases of A, B, and C. And as you can see also from after running this tracing here, you can see that all the customers, the downstream customers, are highlighted in yellow. So another functionality that UNE has is that based on some tracing, it can also perform or display a report with all the information that can be either printed or exported. So another functionality of Utility Network Editor in this case is that it provides the warnings or the report. So we can see the asset ID, we can see some device ID, phase, frequency, peak loads, and we can export these results in a CSV file, or we can print this report, and then this report can be given to our people on the field to contact the customers. Another functionality that UNE offers is that by configuration, we can put the critical infrastructure in our network. So if one of these critical infrastructures is affected, we can receive some notification of a critical infrastructure found in these network problems. I hope today's session has provided you with different options that UNE offers to support the future of spatial data for utilities. So to summarize it a little bit, the reason we developed UNE is that many of our customers were struggling to keep their assets data up to date, and the process of capturing change in the field and putting it back in the system and then validating and then getting it back out to the end users can often be too onerous or too slow. So after they have developed a backlog in the process, and therefore their asset register does not reflect the system as it is. So we felt if we gave people an easy-to-use system that could be widely used across the business in a browser and was very targeted at the task of editing and use the business rules and network logic of the utility network to ensure the validity of data at point of capture, then we could really help with the process. And that's what you have seen today. Now I'm going to hand over to our senior solution architect, Ben, who is going to talk about an implementation of UNE at Southern Water.
Thanks, Glenn. Hello, everybody. My name is Ben Walker, and I'm a senior solution architect working here at Esri UK. I work in our professional services team, helping our water utilities to be successful with ArcGIS. Today, I'm going to be talking about a customer case study. The customer in question is Southern Water. Unfortunately, the team at Southern Water were not able to present today as they're very busy working on the project I'm going to talk to you about. Luckily, I've been working closely with them on the design of their new system, so I'm well placed to talk about what they're doing. Southern Water are no different from any other utility in that they have the same challenges to overcome that Jonathan outlined at the beginning of the webinar. Dealing with a growing population, with a resource that's becoming scarcer due to climate change, reducing leakage and maintaining water quality, as well as always providing excellent customer care. Southern Water are working hard to solve these problems, but they need back office systems that can help them do it effectively. To solve this, Southern Water have instigated the OAM programme. Southern Water provide water and wastewater services to over 2 million customers on the south coast of the UK. You can see their operating areas here. Southern Water are in the middle of a large transformational programme that they call Operational Asset Management, or OAM for short. This program is modernizing all of the back office systems that they use to manage the digital lifecycle of their assets. And within the scope of the OAM program is moving their GIS to ArcGIS across web, desktop, and mobile, including using the utility network and the utility network editor. OAM will run over multiple years with 3 releases. In the first release, the utility network will be introduced in read-only mode. This will allow Southern Water to move 1,000 of their web users onto the new ArcGIS system. This will give users access to numerous web-based applications, allowing users to see incidents on dashboards and then use a new corporate web application to view and interrogate the assets that might be causing the incidents. This will really help the Southern Water staff to do their jobs more effectively. However, Southern Water wanted to maximise their investment in the utility network as much as possible in Release 1. And that is where the utility network editor and tracing comes in. The migration to the UN has gone really well and is now ready to allow users to start tracing. And after discussing this as a team, it was decided that tracing would actually be brought from Release 3 to Release 1. After looking at the trace requirements, we quickly realised that ArcGIS Pro would not be practical to roll out to over 1,000 users. Web App Builder did not have a trace widget, and although Experience Builder does now have a trace widget, it didn't at the time. So we showed Southern Water what the utility network editor could do, and it was decided that that would be used for tracing. And I want to show you some of the features and configurations in the utility network editor that helps Southern Water users to be productive. The first is showing how a user can easily use assets as a trace start or a trace barrier. So the screenshot on the left, you can see I've been using the network traversability panel to look at my network and to move down it or up it. And then I finally found an asset which I'm interested in doing a trace on. So by clicking on the 3 little dots that you can see, I get a context menu, and then I can say use as a trace start. In the future, when I go to the trace panel, that will already be set up for me with my trace start. A similar way of doing this can be with the find panel. Imagine a colleague has given me an asset ID which is faulty. I can do a search on it, and then when I get a result, again, I can use that as my trace start or create it as a barrier. These 2 simple features really help with productivity. On the next screen, you can see some more configurations that we've added. The first is a warning message. I performed the trace, and at least one of the water mains has been marked as hydraulically significant by the network modelling team. This tells the user that they need to take special care with the network in this area and that they should talk to that network modelling team. For instance, this could be that one of those pipes is prone to shearing, and so when water is reintroduced to the pipe, it could result in discoloration to customers' drinking water, which is harmless, but obviously is distasteful to users, to customers. And so some good customer service could be to tell the customers that they need to run the water for a certain amount of time after it goes back on supply. Next, we have the selection summary widget. This shows the useful aggregated information from the trace results. So we can see that there is that we've got the pipe length, we've got the if any key customers had been found, such as hospitals or prisons. We can see the total length of the pipe that was returned from the trace, and we can also see the total pipe volume. Really helpful information. If you know that the pipe volume is too large, you know how long it's going to take to empty and then refill the pipe. Again, being able to more accurately tell customers how long they might be off supply, which is really helpful. Next, we have reports. So you saw that Glenn did some reports in his demo, and we've added some extra ones based on Southern Water's requirements. So you can see here that we've got a pipe report where we have the asset ID, the length of the pipe, the diameter, the material, is it hydraulically significant, and the date commissioned. We could have, of course, put any fields on that we liked, but these are the ones that Southern Water wanted. So in summary, the OAM program is running over 3 years. And Southern Water wanted to maximise their investment in the utility network by providing as many of its features to users as soon as possible. This has been achieved by using the utility network editor to give tracing functionality to users in Release 1 rather than Release 3, where it was originally planned. I'm now going to pass you back to Jonathan for the rest of the webinar. Thank you.
Thank you, Ben, for providing insight into some of the great work you're undertaking with our customers. It's great to see Utility Network Editor in action, even at this initial phase of the project. So before we move to the question and answers session, let's just briefly reflect on how Utility Network Editor can support your challenges and opportunities across the utility sector. As a web solution delivered through a services-based architecture, we've seen how users can view, update, and edit network infrastructure data in the browser at any time and anywhere. This means that users always access a single source of the truth and maintain network connectivity everywhere. We've also seen users receiving instant feedback as they edit, helping drive accurate data and validation at point of entry. The data is then ready for decision makers, integrated systems, collaboration partners in near real time. Finally, we empowered everyone in your organization to access your utility network without requiring specialized GIS knowledge through an easy-to-use interface. Users can run advanced editing and analysis tools like tracing in the web browser, opening new ways of working and a wealth of timely business intelligence. Hopefully this presentation has nurtured some positive thoughts and ideas. Esri UK look forward to working with you collaboratively in the future to see how Utility Network Editor can support your business. So now let's move to the question and answer session. For the Q&A session, I'd like to introduce Alice Duff, Utility Network Editor Product Manager, who will be joining us along with our three speakers today. Welcome, Alice. So
hi, everyone.
We've got some. Hi, Alice.
Being here.
Thanks. We've got a few questions in, which should be coming through to the published section of the Q&A. So the first one, I'll start from the top. Can all data validation rules and feature templates be created in the interface by admins, and how does this manage custom unique feature references? Is that one for yourself, Alice, or maybe one for Ben? I'm not sure who would like to answer that.
I can take them, but then you can also jump in if you fancy. So the Utility Network Editor has behind it a builder application, and in that builder application, as the question sort of states, administrators can create their own feature templates. So you can do that within that application. And then on the custom unique references, you could use attribute rules, but I might need to know a little bit more about that to answer that more fully. So feel free to get in touch, whoever asked that question.
Thank you. Another question here, will UNE be available for US Esri customers? Yes, is the answer to that. I'll take that one. Very easily done. I like the easy one. So yes, it's on a global basis. This can be purchased and used, and we'll look at some of the suppliers at the end of this session.
Also on that one, Jonathan, we're going to be attending the Esri IMGIS conference in Palm Springs at the end of October, beginning of November. So if you are US based and you're attending that conference, we would love to meet you. We're going to have a stand. Yeah, it'd be great to touch base.
Great stuff. Thanks, Alice. Another question in here. How do you customize UNE to make it fit with any UN data model, and how is it deployed? Question around licenses as well.
So the way we built the, I've got that one. The way we built the Utility Network Editor is so that you are able to point your Utility Network Editor instance to any utility network feature service, so you can be using your own customized utility network data model. In the example that Ben used, Southern Water have taken the out-of-the-box utility network data model, and then they have made it work for their own data model and made changes. And you can just point your utility network editor at that UN service, and it will just work. And in terms of deployment, it will. Yeah, Ben's seen it. And then in terms of deployment, it's an installation, so it works just with ArcGIS Enterprise. So you would install it alongside any of the other applications that you were using within your sort of ArcGIS Enterprise portal.
Good stuff. Thanks, Alice. A couple for Ben here. Can UNE integrate with Workflow Manager and attribute rules?
Yes, so it can integrate with Workflow Manager. We're actually thinking of using that with Southern Water actually to have one of the stages in Workflow Manager to open UNE. So Workflow Manager to create a version and then open UNE already set to use that version. So that's one way you can use it. Attribute rules, we use the attribute rules that are actually published with the service. So you'd have those, you'd publish those in ArcGIS Pro and then publish them for your service, and UNE honours those attributes.
Oh, thanks, Ben. Another one which is at the bottom of the list here. Does UNE support branched versioning?
Yes.
Yes.
It has to. It's a simple answer to that.
So we're just sifting through some more questions here. Bear with me. They're coming in.
We had a fun question in regards to web editing being available just only in 2D. So the answer is, at the moment, yes, Utility Network Editor only works in 2D, but our big exciting project for 2022-2023 is to 3D enable the Utility Network Editor. So that's what the entire team are working on at the moment, and we're looking to get some kind of alphas out later this year, early next year.
Just on the roadmap, Alice, is there? Can you sort of give us an update on things that are in the roadmap moving forwards? Obviously, we've seen some of the powerful functionality today. What's coming in the future? So
the big focus for our next release is 3D enablement of Utility Network Editor. So that's where all of the team are spending their time, and that's where that's going to be our next big release.
Stuff. Some further questions in here, maybe one for Ben. On what portal version does UNE currently support?
I'm going to have to ask Alice for that. I know it works with 10.9.1 and 10.8.1. Am I right in saying, Alice, it will work with any version that Utility Network works with?
Yes, so we've tried and tested it up to 10.9.1, and our plan going forward is to always support the latest version. So we'll be testing 11 and 11.1.
Okay. Just sifting through some more questions here. My computer's on a go, so apologies, people.
So there's a question, does UNE need to be built on an Esri prescribed data model, or can we use our own data model? So you do need to have an ArcGIS utility network service to use the utility network editor. If you don't have a utility network service, but you want to make use of the web functionality, the data rules that you've seen in Glenn's demonstration, we have another product called Suite for ArcGIS, which is a web-based, rules-based editor. So you might want to have a look at that if you don't have the utility network.
Thanks, Alice. I'm just struggling to sift through on my computer here, I'm afraid.
So we've got a question here. Is there any courses available on MyEsri which show you how to customize and set up the UNE? I think the answer to that will be no, Alice.
The answer to that is currently no. We're looking to bring out some sort of simple web sort of YouTube videos that will show you base configuration. It is very much in terms of setting up, point at your utility network service and you have a utility network editor application, but there is a lot of customization that you can do. So that's why we're looking to bring out those videos. But at the moment, we don't have any official courses.
Okay. There's another one here about live data. Is the utility network editor able to take live data from other systems and play this back so that the live status of the assets are also indicated? Maybe one for Ben.
I think the answer to that would be yes, but it's not necessarily UNE itself. I think if someone's talking about reading information from, say, a sensor, you could use something like velocity to read that ArcGIS velocity to read that data and then bring it into the system. And as long as it's in a, if it makes its way to a feature service, then utility network editor can show it. We've got one asking about, and I've lost it now on the list, about does it support subtype group layers? Kind of, but not fully at the moment. I think is the answer to that one, isn't it, Alice? I think there's a few extra bits needed. I didn't read that one properly. I thought you just said subtypes. We've got another one. Does the UNE support non-spatial objects? And the answer is yes, it does.
Yes.
I think we're nearly done on the question front by the looks of it. Yes, we've got a question. Will the recording be made available to us? The answer is yes. We'll just summarise on that in a minute. There will be an email going out to everyone, just summarising and putting around the link so that you can watch this again and forward it to colleagues as well. There's a question come in about any plans for creating network diagrams through the web. So network diagrams are part of utilities network. Are there any thoughts about that and how that sits within there?
So we do have already available within the utility network editor the capability to view network diagrams. So it didn't come up in the demo, but that is available already. In regards to creating the utility network diagrams, we don't have that functionality available at present.
Okay. We've got one about advanced reporting capabilities. Or are there further thoughts about reporting within UNE moving forwards?
I'd love to know a bit more about what those requirements might be. So I think at the end of the webinar, I will be sharing like a contact email. I'd love to understand a bit more about what you're looking for there in regards to reporting capabilities.
Okay. And we've got one about offline editing, which Alice, you probably have some news on that one.
So offline editing is very much in our roadmap. We first of all need the utility network itself to support offline editing. So that actual Esri service, as soon as that's available, we will make a utility network editor work with offline services.
Stuff. And one final question here is around getting in touch with the Esri team. As I said, we will put in a link on the screen, actually coming up on the next slide, so you can follow up on this today. So if we can just move on to the last slide, please. So thank you all for your time today. I hope you found this session of interest. If you have any further questions, please don't hesitate to contact the Esri UK directly via the details on screen now. Our utility network speciality partners are also available to support you on this topic. So I mentioned that earlier around some of the global contacts that you can get in touch with. Thank you again. Thanks to the speakers. Thanks to Alice for answering the questions as well. Thank you to everyone for joining, and I hope you enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you.